going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to be exploring which ratings matter, and starting off this series for CFB 25, we're going to specifically talk about which ratings matter across the offensive line in today's video. I think this is one of the best places to start because it is one of the best places to get an immediate impact if you can really get guys to the right positions with the right ratings. This is going to be pretty similar to information that I've given in the past, but it is different in college football because it is hard to find players that can really match what you need them to do on the offensive line and at each of the left tackle through right tackle positions. So on a general basis, the principles still pretty much remain the same, where you want your best pass blockers to be at left tackle and right tackle. In general, I'm going to have my strongest player with the best impact blocking and power blocking at the center position. And then my left guard and right guard are typically going to be a little bit more athletic, still pretty much run block focused, but maybe a little bit more pass block depending on how you run your offense. You might want to go with 5 pass blockers across the board, which is something you definitely can do within this game, especially if you're going to run a spread offense or something of that nature. But you can really help yourself out in the run game by making sure that you have good run blockers in the middle of your offensive line as well. However, what is actually going to matter the most for your tackle positions is going to be your pass block finesse. And so this is where things get a little bit complicated with offensive line in this game because, number one, it's difficult to find players that are balanced. Typically, a player is going to have better ratings in one direction or the other. As an example here, my left tackle has really good pass block power, but pretty weak pass block finesse. So he's actually not necessarily the best left tackle that you could possibly have. In fact, my freshman coming in has probably better pass blocking ratings as a whole because he has 82 or 81 pass block and 80 pass block finesse, and that's going to be more useful against most players that he's going to be going up against most defenses. So again, pass block finesse is really what you're looking for on that side of the ball. My left tackle here is really good at run blocking though. He's got solid run block and really good run block power, run block finesse, really good lead block, really good impact block. So to be honest with you guys, this is really just a run blocking focused player. This is somebody that I rely on to run behind quite a bit. And because he was kind of already on the team, I didn't do a whole lot to move that guy around. At right tackle, the story is going to be very much the same. You want good pass block finesse. And again, this is a player that is a solid run blocker, but not so much pass blocking. His pass blocking rating is good. His pass block power is good, but his pass block finesse is not very good. So he's going to get taken over pretty quickly by this guy that has just better pass blocking ratings, not necessarily as good in the run blocking side of things, but this is a unique circumstance, and this game plays and operates quite a bit differently than Madden does. So a lot of times you just kind of have to work with what you have. If I was going to focus in on one rating, though, if you're determining who to move to tackle and who to move inside and whatnot, if they have good pass block finesse, they should be out here on the outside. Unless they're really good at something else that they could be utilized elsewhere, you want your high pass block finesse players out here. So this is actually a really good example of 2 players that should probably be playing another position, because pass block finesse being at 64, most of the time you're going up against speed rushers on the edge. Pass block finesse of 73 over here. Again, most times you're going up against finesse rushers. Not to say that you aren't going up against power rushers, and I feel like in the recruiting classes there are a lot more power rushers than speed rushers on the defensive side in terms of recruiting. So it might come to pass that later in dynasties and whatnot, you're going up against more power rushers in the passing game. So you might have to consider that rating a little bit more important than just pass block finesse. But in most circumstances, 64 isn't going to get the job done. And trust me, I notice it pretty often that my tackles are getting beat and my quarterback's getting pressure because of the fact that those guys don't have good pass block finesse. And then, as I mentioned, at the center position, I'm looking for somebody that is just generally a good run blocker and has good lead block, impact block probably being the most important one combined with their strength, because these are just guys that the person that they're going to be blocking is going to be right over top of them, or they're going to be shaded to one side or the other. So you need them to simply get a good impact, a good point of contact on that guy and get a push. That only happens if you have good impact blocking, if you have good strength, if it's a good sized player. So as you can see, this center is actually a really good run blocker, a really good center. Even though his rating's not super high, he's going to get the job done because he's got 90 strength, because he's got 93 or 94 impact block. His run blocking ratings aren't the greatest in the world, but they're very much serviceable. His run block is around 80. His run block power is around 80. I wish that would be a little bit better. And then his run block finesse is really good. So he's very good at zone type of plays. Zone plays are typically what applies to your run block finesse rating, whereas your run block power rating typically aligns with gap scheme offensive plays like power and those types of things. However, again, it also relates to what type of a defender you're going up against. So typically I prefer higher power ratings here. This guy's also a pretty good pass blocker. This guy could actually probably get away with playing tackle as an example. His awareness is decent. He's got 82, 85. This guy should probably be playing tackle. Likewise, this senior that is backing up on my center position, I'm actually thinking, now that I'm looking at him, I'm probably going to go move this guy to tackle to start next game because his strength isn't all that good. He's not really going to be a great center. His impact block, lead block aren't necessarily the best in the world. He's not super athletic, so not really going to play guard for me. But, man, he's got crazy pass block power, pass block finesse. This guy should probably be starting at tackle for me over one of those other guys. So it's a good thing I'm making this video. And then as far as guards are concerned, you definitely want your more athletic players over there at guard. You're going to typically hone in on their speed, acceleration, agility, change of direction. So this guard is really good in terms of his athleticism. You're going to want guys that can get up to the second level, that can get to linebackers. If they're not athletic enough to do so, then you're going to struggle with your offensive line, especially in the run game, because they have to be able to double team and then basically shed or get off of that double team to get up to the next level. So 67 speed, not the best in the world, but it's more serviceable than most of the linemen we've seen so far. Typically, you would love to have something in the high 60s to 70s. That 77 excel, 80 excel, those are really good. 81 agility is crazy. I'm actually genuinely surprised to see if this guy has 81 agility. Change of direction, not the best, but we're not really asking them to make huge cuts and those types of things. So that agility, that athleticism is going to be a really solid combo there. His strength isn't the best. It doesn't necessarily need to be. I mean, typically you would like your strength to be higher than 80, but that really is the baseline minimum across all offensive line positions. 85 awareness is going to be really good. That means he's going to get to where he needs to go and adjust accordingly. His pass blocking ratings are really solid, 80 plus across the board. His run blocking ratings are really solid, basically 80 plus, almost 80 at run block power, but 90 on run block finesse. Lead block's really good, impact block's really good. That's just a generally well-rounded offensive lineman that's going to fit in really well at the guard position. I didn't mention it before, but your lead blocking rating is going to be really important for guards. You need a player that can get upfield and get onto backers, and the lead blocking rating is going to determine that. Impact blocking is going to determine whether he gets a push when he gets to that player, so a good combo there can be really good. And I'm noticing some of the depth players that I have at this position might not necessarily be very good guards because of their ratings. So again, something good to look at. Right guard position, very much so the same thing. Again, this guy's a higher overall, but his athleticism is not very good. 56 speed, that explains some of the reasons why he hasn't been able to get up to the second level and whatnot. Good strength, good awareness, decent pass block. His pass block finesse is really weak. Pass block power is good. So it makes sense for him to be an interior lineman based on his power. His run blocking ratings are good. His lead block's good. His impact block is decent. So that explains why he's a guard. He's just not going to be the most athletic guard around. He really doesn't fit into the center role necessarily. He's not going to fit into the tackle role based on his ratings. So this is really the only spot that I would recommend playing a guy like this. He might just not necessarily be your best answer despite his overall being better than the other guys at those positions. So again, there really aren't a whole lot of ratings to even pay attention to on the offensive line as a whole, and they're all going to be right up front here whenever you take a look at your roster. You're going to want to look at their athleticism depending on their position. You're going to want to look at their strength, their awareness, their pass block, 3 pass block ratings, their 3 run block ratings, the impact block and lead block rating. Stamina definitely does come into account depending on what league you're in, but again, the combination of those things changes depending on the position. And very often, like I showed you with my left tackle, you're going to get guys that are strong in one area and not very strong in another area. And depending on what development trait a player has, they're going to develop hard in the area that they're already actually good at. So because this left tackle is really good at power blocking in both run blocking and pass blocking, they're going to be considered that archetype, and that archetype is going to just be the one that the upgrades get put into if it auto upgrades the player. So definitely something for you to consider. If you are a higher dev player, as they continue to get higher and higher overall, like an elite offensive lineman, they're going to become more well-rounded. They will still sometimes be very focused in one direction, so definitely worthwhile keeping that in mind. So if you're going to get in young players and put them at positions that you want them to develop into, make sure you're taking those finesse blockers and putting them at the tackle spots so that they continue to develop as finesse blockers. Make sure you put those power guys on the interior. Make sure you put those athletic lead blocking linemen at the guard positions. And you're going to end up having a lot of success with those players developing into a really effective unit on the offensive line. I've seen a lot of people say that they have issues, even if they have really high overall offensive linemen in this game, with those players not performing that well and not making that big of a difference and still missing blocks and that type of thing. I do think there is some legitimacy to that, but I also think that it's really worth noting that a lot of the linemen in the game, even the higher rated ones, are unbalanced in their capabilities. And there's probably times where you're running a run play and you don't realize that it's taking into account their run block power as opposed to their run block finesse, or you're pass blocking and you probably don't necessarily realize that you're going up against a power rusher as opposed to a finesse rusher, and those things are going to be accounted for with the ratings and determine whether that guy's doing a good job or not. I decided just to go over to LSU in this franchise just to kind of get a look at some things and see if there was a good example to show you. And there actually is the first player that I looked at, their right tackle, is a 91 overall. So you'd be thinking, oh, this guy shouldn't really be missing any assignments. But number one, you have to think about the fact that they're SEC, so they're probably going up against some of the best players in the entire roster. But the other thing to consider is that his pass blocking is only an 88 for a 91 overall. That seems maybe a little low. The pass block power is 91, but his pass block finesse is an 84. Most of the SEC pass rushers probably have better finesse moves than 84, and so this guy is not going to be getting the job done quite as well as you might think a 91 overall player is. His rating might be a little bit inflated by the fact that he has 97 awareness. It might be inflated by the fact that his other ratings are high, but that rating specifically is a little bit lower. And then I also really feel like it's worthwhile mentioning that you're not going to end up getting as high overall players on the offensive line as some of these teams start with. So I think a good example of this is Ohio State. Unless you're finding all elite talent players at the offensive line, which you're never going to be able to because there are so few of them available, you're going to have trouble getting high 80s into the 90s linemen ever for any team in this game. Some of the players start that high overall because that's the way that they've set the roster, but getting them to recruit and develop to that point is really difficult. You take a look at Ohio State here, and their line is an 81, an 82, an 85, an 85, an 83, and most of those guys are seniors that are mid 80s. So that's really what you're going to be looking at for potentially a good lineman. If you have one of those 90s early into a dynasty, you should definitely cherish them and definitely be aware that it's going to be really difficult to replace that type of a player no matter what team you are and how good you recruit. But with that being said, I'd like to hear down in the comment section below, is there anything you guys focus on differently with the offensive line? How do you handle offensive line recruiting in college football 25? I tend to recruit heavy on the offensive line to try to find better development trait players because I do feel that getting a good balanced offensive line and having the right guys in the right positions makes a massive difference within the game. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. Do you feel the same way or do you feel differently? Leave that in the comment section below. Hopefully this info was useful to you, and if it was, leave a like down below, comment, and subscribe. As always, I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you have a good one.